In the batch funding table, the grant recipient will need to break down the requested funding from the grants for each home type. A home type is the combination of ownership type, property type, and wall type. This is generated from the data in the batch properties table. So for example, the entry in this table is a home type of owner-occupied mid-terrace with cavity walls. There is a request for £8,000 of funding from the Energy Efficiency Grant to upgrade 2 homes of this home type. To add to the table, click the Add button in the bottom left corner and select the desired home type. Select the grant type that the funding is being requested from, which can be either energy efficiency or low carbon heat. Specify the number of homes that this funding is for, and then enter the amount of grant funding being requested. Private rental homes and social homes will also need to specify the total cost of upgrading this home type, inclusive of the grant funding. This is used to calculate landlord contributions for these home types. HUG2 requires landlord contributions for social housing and private rental homes. For social housing homes, the landlord must contribute at least 50% of the total cost of upgrading the homes, and for private rental homes, the landlord must contribute at least 33% of the total cost of upgrading the homes. The landlord contribution is calculated by taking the total cost, subtracting the requested grant funding, and then dividing the result by the total cost. So for example, this is a social housing home type. The total cost is £20,000 and the cost from grant is £8,000. Subtracting 8,000 from 20,000 gives a result of 12,000, and then divided by 20,000 is equal to 0.6 or 60% of the total cost, and is within the threshold. If I increase the grant funding to £12,000, a flag will appear at the bottom of the form, as you can see here. And going back to this, as the landlord contribution has fallen from 60% of the total cost to 40%, which is below the 50% minimum. Each home type combination is eligible for different amounts of funding from the grants. The form calculates the amount of funding that each row in the funding table is eligible for. If the cost from the grant is higher than the funding that they are eligible for, then an error will appear here at the end of the row, informing the user that they have exceeded their project allocations. By decreasing this, you go back underneath the maximum cost cap, and the funding is now valid again. By calculating the amount of funding that each row is eligible for, the form can allocate credits to the grant recipient. Where the maximum amount of funding is not spent for a home type, then this funding is reallocated to the grant recipient so that they can upgrade their other properties more flexibly. For example, for owner-occupied flats with cavity walls, each property is eligible for £3,000 of funding. Normally, a request for £5,000 of funding on one of these homes would be rejected. However, if a home of the same type received only £1,000 of funding from the £3,000 available, this would leave £2,000 available to spend on a home of the same type, either in that batch or in future batches. When a batch is approved, a financial instruction needs to be created. The requested funding on the financial instruction is equal to the sum of the cost from grant column.